The stars had never looked more beautiful. Ambassador Han Taman stood at the window of the UNS Harmony, watching the distant galaxies drift past. He was 38 years old and had spent the last 5 years building bridges between Earth and the alien species of the Galactic Council. Today would be his greatest mission yet. Behind him, Dr. Park Mina was reviewing her notes one more time. She was nervous. The Vraxian Dominion had a reputation for being difficult, aggressive even. But Taman believed in the power of diplomacy. He always had. Every species could be reasoned with, he often said. Every conflict could be solved with words instead of weapons. Captain Lee Hyun walked onto the bridge, his uniform crisp and perfect. He had commanded the Harmony for 3 years now, and he trusted his crew completely. But something felt wrong about this mission. The Vraxians had been expanding their territory aggressively, pushing smaller species out of their homes. When those species complained to the Council, the Vraxians ignored them. The Council moved slowly. Too slowly. Meetings led to more meetings. Committees formed subcommittees. Meanwhile, the Vraxians continued their expansion. That was when Ambassador Taman volunteered. He would go directly to the Vraxian homeworld. He would talk to their leaders face to face. He would make them understand that peace was better than conquest. Back on Earth, Admiral Kim De-sung watched the mission status reports from Luna Base. He had expressed his concerns to the civilian government, but they dismissed him. War was ancient history, they said. The galaxy had moved beyond such primitive behavior. The Council maintained peace through dialogue and economic pressure. Military force was no longer necessary. Admiral Kim did not agree. He had studied Earth's history carefully. He knew that peace only worked when both sides wanted it, and the Vraxians did not seem interested in peace. They wanted power, but his warnings went unheard. The politicians believed in the Council system. They had to. Humanity was still new to the galactic community. Only 47 years had passed since first contact with the Valorians. The Harmony carried a crew of 73 people. Besides Ambassador Taman and Dr. Park Mina, there were 2 junior diplomats named Nam Ji-hoon and Choi Sora. They were young and idealistic, fresh from the diplomatic academy. There was also a security team of 8 soldiers, though they were lightly armed. This was a peace mission after all. The ship's cargo hold was filled with gifts, art from Earth, music, literature, scientific data, everything humanity could offer to show their goodwill. There were trade agreements ready to be signed, offering the Vraxians access to Earth's technology and resources. Surely, Taman thought, no species could refuse such generosity. Dr. Mina looked up from her notes. She had been studying the Vraxian language and culture for months. They were an insectoid species with a rigid hierarchy and a strong warrior tradition. Their society valued strength above all else. Weakness was despised. Mercy was seen as foolishness. But surely she hoped they would respect courage. And it took courage to come here unarmed, offering peace. Captain Hyun received the navigation update. They would reach Vraxian space in 2 days. He ordered the crew to prepare. Everyone checked their equipment. The diplomats rehearsed their speeches. The security team ran drills, though they did not expect trouble. The Council had arranged this meeting. The Vraxians had agreed to receive them. Everything was official and proper. Ambassador Taman sat in his quarters that night writing a message to his family. He told his wife about the mission. He told his daughter he would be home soon. He believed it. This mission would succeed. He would prove that humanity belonged in the galactic community. He would show that peace was always possible. Across the galaxy, other species watched with interest. The young humans were attempting something bold. Most thought it was foolish. The Vraxians were dangerous. They did not respect diplomacy, but perhaps the humans would succeed. Perhaps their fresh perspective would make a difference. Perhaps their innocence would touch something in the Vraxian leaders. On the 3rd day, the Harmony entered Vraxian territory. Captain Hyun broadcast their peaceful intentions on all frequencies. They received a response quickly. Vraxian traffic control granted them permission to approach their homeworld, Vraxis Prime. The crew felt relief. The hard part was over. They had been welcomed. Ambassador Taman gathered his team in the conference room. He gave them a final briefing. "Be respectful," he said. "Listen more than you speak. Show them we come as equals, not as superiors or inferiors. Show them we genuinely want peace." Dr. Mina nodded. Namjahoon and Choi Sora looked nervous but determined. They understood the importance of this moment. The Harmony moved slowly through the Vraxian system. Other ships passed nearby, massive warships bristling with weapons. Captain Hyun noted their size with concern. The Vraxian military was much larger than intelligence reports suggested. But this was not his mission. His job was to deliver the diplomats safely and then wait for their return. Vraxis Prime appeared on the view screen. It was a harsh world, mostly desert and mountains. Cities spread across the surface like scars. The crew could see orbital stations and defense platforms everywhere. This was a civilization built for war. But maybe, just maybe, they were tired of war. Maybe they wanted something different. Ambassador Taman stood on the bridge watching the planet grow larger. His heart beat faster with anticipation. History was about to be made. He would be remembered as the man who brought peace to this corner of the galaxy. He smiled at Captain Hyun. Soon, he said, they would all be celebrating together. He had no idea how wrong he was. The Harmony entered orbit around Vraxis Prime exactly on schedule. Captain Lee Hyun followed every protocol perfectly. His communications officer broadcast their identification codes continuously. Everything was proper. Everything was official. The Vraxian traffic control acknowledged their presence and gave them coordinates for their orbital position. Ambassador Taman stood, ready in the shuttle bay with his team. Dr. Park, Mina had her translation device prepared. Namjahoon and Choi Sora carried the ceremonial gifts. The security team stood at attention, their dress uniforms spotless. They would make a good impression. They would show the Vraxians that humanity was civilized and respectful. Then everything went wrong. Without warning, the Harmony's sensors screamed alerts. Vraxian warships were surrounding them. Dozens of massive vessels moved into attack positions. Captain Hyun immediately tried to hail them, to ask what was happening. There must be some mistake. They were invited here. They were on a diplomatic mission. The response came not in words but in weapons. A pulse of energy struck the Harmony, and all their shields died instantly. The lights flickered. Systems failed across the ship. The crew stared at their displays in shock. Their defensive systems were completely disabled. They were helpless. Metal screamed as Vraxian boarding pods slammed into the hull. Explosive charges blew holes through the walls. Vraxian soldiers poured into the corridors, their armor gleaming, their weapons raised. The human security team tried to fight back. They were brave. They were well-trained. But they were overwhelmed in seconds. Ambassador Taman ran toward the communication room. He had to make contact. He had to explain. This was a terrible misunderstanding. But plasma fire erupted around him. Dr. Mina screamed as a bolt struck the wall next to her head. Namjahoon tried to pull her to safety, but more Vraxians appeared, blocking every escape route. Captain Hyun ordered his crew to send a distress signal. His communications officer worked frantically at the damaged console. They managed to get a partial transmission out before Vraxian soldiers stormed the bridge. The captain stood to face them, his hands raised in surrender. They shot him anyway. He died still trying to understand why. The Vraxian commander walked through the ship, stepping over bodies. He found Ambassador Taman in the conference room, surrounded by his surviving team members. Taman stepped forward, his voice shaking but firm. He spoke in the Vraxian language, the words Dr. Mina had taught him. They came in peace. There must be some mistake. Please let them explain. The Vraxian commander listened. Then he laughed. It was a terrible sound, harsh and cold. He activated a communication device that broadcast to the entire galaxy. He wanted everyone to hear what he said next. His words would be remembered forever. We do not negotiate with lesser species, he said. You came here thinking words could stop us. You came here weak and foolish. You will serve as an example to all the other weak species in the galaxy. This is what happens to those who cannot defend themselves. Dr. Mina tried to run. She made it 3 steps before they cut her down. Choi Sora fell next, then Namjahoon. Ambassador Taman stood alone, tears streaming down his face. Not from fear, but from the terrible understanding that he had been wrong. Diplomacy only worked when both sides chose peace. The Vraxians had already made their choice. His last thought was of his daughter. He hoped she would remember him. He hoped Earth would learn from his mistake. Then the Vraxian commander gave the order, and Ambassador Han Taman died with his diplomatic credentials still clutched in his hand. Throughout the ship, the massacre continued. Every human was killed, not in battle but in cold execution. The Vraxians recorded everything. They wanted the galaxy to see. They wanted everyone to know that they were strong and humanity was weak. They dragged the bodies to Vraxis Prime and displayed them in their capital city like hunting trophies. The footage spread across the galaxy within hours. Billions of beings watched in horror as the Vraxians mocked the dead humans. The Harmony floated dead in orbit, its hull torn open, its crew murdered. 73 souls had left Earth seeking peace. 73 souls would never return. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss the situation. Many expressed shock and outrage. Some offered condolences to humanity. But when it came time to act, the Council did what it always did. They formed committees. They drafted strongly worded statements. They discussed economic sanctions that would take years to implement. On Earth, the news arrived like a nuclear bomb. Every screen showed the footage. Every person watched their diplomats die. Cities fell silent. Billions of people stood frozen, unable to process what they were seeing. This was supposed to be a peaceful mission. This was supposed to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. In Seoul, Park Seon-hee watched her daughter die on the screen. She watched Dr. Park Mina fall, watched the light leave her eyes. The woman collapsed to her knees, a sound of pure anguish tearing from her throat. Around the world, 73 families learned that their loved ones were never coming home. The UN General Assembly went into emergency session. Representatives shouted at each other. Some called for immediate military action. Others urged restraint, reminding everyone that the Council had procedures for this. War was not the answer, they said. War never solved anything. They had to trust the system. But in Luna Base, Admiral Kim Dae-sung watched the footage with different eyes. He had warned them. He had told them the Vraxians were dangerous. Now 73 people were dead because politicians believed peace was always possible. He stood at his window looking down at Earth and made a silent promise to the fallen. This would not go unanswered. The Vraxians celebrated their victory. They broadcast messages claiming that humanity had been put in their place. Other species should learn from this example. The strong ruled the galaxy. The weak served or died. It was the natural order of things. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. Earth declared 7 days of mourning. Every flag across the planet dropped to half-staff. Cities that never slept fell silent. The lights of Tokyo dimmed. The streets of New York emptied. Even the busiest markets in Mumbai closed their doors. Humanity had lost 73 of its children, and the wound ran deep. In Seoul, millions gathered for the memorial service of Ambassador Han Tae-min. His wife stood at the podium, her face a mask of grief. She spoke of a good man who believed in peace, a man who thought words could bridge any divide, a man who died trying to make the galaxy a better place. Her voice broke and the crowd wept with her. Park Seon-hee delivered a eulogy for her daughter that would be remembered forever. She stood before the cameras, her back straight despite the pain in her eyes. Dr. Park Mina had been brilliant, she said. She had dedicated her life to understanding other species, to building bridges across the stars, and she had been murdered for it. The old woman's voice grew stronger as she spoke. My daughter believed in peace, she said. But she also would have wanted justice. The word justice echoed across Earth. In homes and offices, in schools and government buildings, people began to question. The peace movement had been strong before. Now it fractured. How could you make peace with those who saw mercy as weakness? How could you negotiate with murderers who displayed bodies as trophies? The Galactic Council sent representatives to Earth. They arrived in their elegant ships, wearing their formal robes, speaking in careful diplomatic language. They expressed deep condolences. They assured humanity that the Council would handle this matter. There were procedures, they explained. Tribunals would be formed. Evidence would be gathered. In 15 to 20 years, justice would be served. 20 years. The human representatives listened in silence. 20 years while the Vraxians continued their expansion. 20 years while the bodies of their loved ones were displayed on an alien world. 20 years of meetings and committees and strongly worded resolutions. The Council representatives did not seem to understand why the humans looked so angry. The Valorian ambassador, who had been humanity's first contact with the galaxy, spoke with genuine sympathy. He urged patience. He reminded them that they were young to galactic politics. The Council's system had maintained peace for thousands of years. It worked slowly, but it worked. Violence would only create more violence. Surely humans understood this. The human representatives thanked him politely. Then the UN Secretary General, Yoon Ji-woo, stood to address the council. Her statement was brief, cold. Every word fell like ice. "We thank the council for their condolences," she said. "Earth will handle this matter internally. We request no interference." The council representatives looked confused. What did that mean? Within hours, every human diplomat left council stations. The embassy on the council homeworld closed its doors. Human trade ships returned to Earth. Human research stations powered down. The entire Sol system went dark. No transmissions. No communications. No response to hails. It was as if humanity had vanished from the galactic stage. The council watched nervously. This was unprecedented. Species did not just leave the council. They did not cut off all contact. What were the humans doing? Some representatives tried to contact Earth directly. Their messages went unanswered. Automated defense platforms activated around the Sol system, their weapons tracking any ship that came too close. Behind Earth's closed doors, everything changed. The UN held emergency sessions every day. Military commanders who had been ignored for decades suddenly found themselves in positions of power. Admiral Kim Dae-sung received unprecedented authority as Supreme Commander of United Earth Forces. When he walked into the UN chamber, representatives stood. They knew what was coming. General Oh Soo-jin began mobilizing ground forces. Across Earth, young men and women volunteered for military service in numbers not seen since ancient wars. The recruiting offices were overwhelmed. Every branch exceeded their goals within days. People wanted to serve. They wanted justice for the fallen. They wanted the galaxy to know that humanity was not weak. Dr. Shin Mireille stood before a secret committee of military leaders and government officials. She was the director of advanced weapons research, a position most people did not know existed. For decades, her department had been developing technology in secret. While humanity showed the galaxy peaceful exploration ships, they had been building something else. Something powerful. Project Arsenal, she said, and the display screens lit up with schematics. Warships unlike anything the Council had seen. Weapons systems based on principles the other species had not discovered. Shield technology that could stop anything the Vraxians could throw at them. Humanity had been preparing for this possibility since the day they met the Valorians. They hoped they would never need these weapons. Now they did. Around Luna, Mars, and the moons of Jupiter, shipyards roared to life. Construction that had been proceeding slowly suddenly accelerated. Workers labored around the clock in 3 shifts. The industrial might of humanity, which had built cities on hostile worlds and terraformed entire planets, now focused entirely on one goal. War Fleet Admiral Ryu Jinho oversaw the assembly of the fleet. These were not the light patrol ships humanity had shown the Council. These were true warships, bristling with weapons armored against anything the galaxy could produce. Each one was named. The UN's Retribution, the UNS Vengeance, the UNS Remembrance, and 47 heavy cruisers, each bearing the name of someone who died on the Harmony. The galaxy watched and wondered. What were the humans doing? Satellite images showed massive military construction. Energy signatures indicated weapons testing. But no one could get close enough to see details. The automated defenses around Sol system were too thorough. Messages sent to Earth received no response. Humanity had gone silent. Some Council species grew concerned. A few threatened sanctions if humanity did not explain itself. Others reminded them that humans were grieving and should be given time. The Valorians tried repeatedly to establish contact. They wanted to help, to guide the young species through this crisis. But Earth's communications remained dark. The Vraxians laughed at the concern. Let the humans hide in their little system, they said. Let them mourn their dead. The lesson had been taught. Weakness would be punished. They continued their expansion, pushing into territories claimed by smaller species. The Council protested. The Vraxians ignored them. What could anyone do? 47 days after the massacre, Earth's silence broke. Admiral Kim Dae-sung's face appeared on every galactic communication channel. His expression was cold. His voice was steady. And his message was only 37 words long. But those 37 words would change the galaxy forever. Admiral Kim Dae-sung spoke to the Vraxian Dominion directly. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with something the galaxy had not seen from humanity before. pure, focused anger. To the Vraxian Dominion, he said, "You murdered our envoys. You displayed their bodies as trophies. You declared us weak. You are about to learn what humanity does to those who mistake our mercy for weakness." He paused, letting the words sink in. "No negotiation," he continued. "No tribunal. Justice will be delivered by our hand." Then he turned to face the camera fully. "To the Galactic Council," he said, his voice dropping to something even colder. "Stay out of our way." The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings stared at their screens in shock. The Council erupted in chaos. This was unprecedented. This violated every diplomatic norm established over thousands of years. Species did not declare war unilaterally. They did not threaten the Council. The Valorian ambassador tried to contact Earth immediately. His messages went unanswered. Other species demanded that humanity be sanctioned, punished, brought back into line. But while the Council argued, Earth moved. The defensive platforms around the Sol system shut down, not because they were no longer needed, but because they were no longer necessary. The human fleet was leaving. Ship after ship emerged from Earth's orbital yards, from Luna Base, from the construction facilities around Mars and Jupiter's moons. The galaxy watched in growing disbelief. The UNS Retribution led the fleet. It was massive, larger than any warship humanity had shown the Council before. Captain Kang Hyejan commanded from its bridge, her jaw set with determination. She had been a decorated officer before this, known for her tactical brilliance. Now she would prove it on a galactic stage. Behind her ship came the UNS Vengeance, bristling with weapons that made Council military analysts nervous just looking at them. The UNS Remembrance followed, a hospital ship that carried the best medical technology Earth possessed. Dr. Jung Eunji commanded its medical teams, prepared to save lives even in the midst of war. She had volunteered specifically for this mission. Her brother had been one of the security officers killed on the Harmony. She would honor him by showing that humanity could be both fierce and merciful. 47 heavy cruisers formed the fleet's core. Each one bore the name of someone who died seeking peace. The UNS Han Taemin, the UNS Park Mina, the UNS Lee Hyun. Names that would be remembered, names that would be avenged. Around them flew hundreds of smaller ships. Destroyers, frigates, support vessels, and stealth carriers launching fighter wings that seemed to vanish from sensors. Military experts across the galaxy analyzed what they saw and dismissed it. Humans had numbers, certainly, but the Vraxian Dominion possessed one of the largest fleets in known space. They had been conquering worlds for centuries. They had warriors bred specifically for combat. This human fleet, impressive as it looked, would be destroyed. It would be a massacre. Again. What those experts did not know was that humanity had been preparing for war since the day they met the Valorians. They hoped it would never come. They pursued peace with genuine belief. But they also understood reality. The galaxy was dangerous. So while they showed peaceful exploration vessels to the Council, they built weapons in secret. Weapons designed by Dr. Shin Mirai and her team of brilliant scientists. Quantum entanglement communication allowed every human ship to coordinate instantly across vast distances. No delay, no jamming. Combat AI systems analyzed enemy movements and predicted actions before they happened. Shield-penetrating missiles that the Vraxians had no defense against. Plasma torpedoes hot enough to melt through any armor. And stealth technology that made ships effectively invisible until they opened fire. The fleet jumped to slip space, moving faster than any Council ship could follow. Their destination was known to everyone. The Vraxian border. Captain Kang stood on her bridge watching the stars blur past. She thought about Ambassador Taemin, who had believed words could solve any problem. She thought about Dr. Mina, who had dedicated her life to understanding other species. Good people who died because they trusted in peace. She would honor them by finishing what they started. Not with words this time. The Vraxians had made their choice when they murdered unarmed diplomats. Now humanity would show them the consequences of that choice. Her hands clenched on the armrests of her command chair. For Taemin, she thought. For Mina. For all 73. Commander Baek Min-seok prepared his special operations teams aboard one of the stealth carriers. His soldiers were the best humanity could produce. Enhanced reflexes, advanced armor. Weapons that could adapt to any enemy. They had trained for years for missions they hoped would never come. Now those missions were real. They would board enemy stations, capture key targets, and show the Vraxians what human soldiers could do. The Vraxian High Command received reports of the approaching human fleet. They laughed. Truly laughed. These primitives thought they could challenge the Dominion? Very well. They would be given another lesson. Fleetmaster Vexthor was assigned to defend the border fortress of Kresh. He took only 150 ships. That would be more than enough to crush the humans. Vexthor broadcast his own message as the human fleet approached. He mocked them, called them weak, promised that their bodies would join their diplomats on display. He expected the humans to turn back, to run, to beg for mercy. Instead, Captain Kang's response was a single word: fire. The human fleet emerged from slipspace in perfect formation. Their targeting systems locked onto Vraxian ships with mechanical precision. The combat AI calculated firing solutions faster than any organic mind could comprehend. And when the railguns opened fire, the Vraxians learned their first terrible lesson about humanity. They had been preparing for war since before they met the stars. And they were very, very good at it. The battle lasted 4 hours and 17 minutes. When it ended, the fortress of Kresh belonged to humanity. Fleetmaster Vexthor was dead, and the galaxy understood that something fundamental had changed. The humans were not weak. They were not naive. They had simply been giving everyone else a chance to choose peace. The Vraxians had chosen war. Now they would face the consequences. The Vraxian shield shattered under the first volley. Their defensive systems had been designed to stop energy weapons, the kind most species used. They were not prepared for kinetic projectiles traveling at relativistic speeds. Railgun rounds tore through armor like paper. Explosions blossomed across Vraxian hulls. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds died in seconds. Fleetmaster Vexthor screamed orders at his crew. Return fire. Evasive maneuvers. Call for reinforcements. But the human targeting was impossibly precise. Every shot hit exactly where it would do the most damage. Command bridges, engine rooms, weapon systems. The combat AI predicted his moves before he made them. It was like fighting an enemy that could see the future. Then the stealth fighters appeared. One moment the sensors showed empty space. The next, torpedoes were slamming into Vraxian capital ships from impossible angles. The fighters vanished again before return fire could track them. Vexthor felt something he had never experienced before: fear. These humans were not supposed to be this good. They were supposed to be easy prey. The UNS Vengeance demonstrated why it had been named humanity's judgment. Its experimental weapons unleashed destruction on a scale the Vraxians had never seen. A single shot from its main gun vaporized 3 destroyers that had been flying in formation. The weapon did not just destroy metal. It erased matter itself, leaving nothing but expanding plasma clouds where ships had been. Commander Bayek Minseok led his teams onto the fortress itself. The assault pods punched through the station's hull with shaped charges. Human soldiers poured through the breaches, their armor-proof against Vraxian weapons. They moved with terrible efficiency, each movement precise, each shot lethal. The Vraxian defenders had been bred for war. The humans had perfected it. The fortress fell in 47 minutes. 1 minute for each person murdered on the Harmony. Commander Beck had timed it deliberately. When the last Vraxian defender surrendered, he checked his chronometer and nodded. Perfect. His team secured the facility, taking prisoners according to the rules of war. Unlike the Vraxians, humans did not execute those who surrendered. Captain Kang broadcast from the captured fortress on all Vraxian frequencies. Behind her, bound and alive, were the fortress commanders. The same commanders who had celebrated the massacre of human diplomats. She spoke in the Vraxian language, her pronunciation perfect. This is for Ambassador Han Taemin. This is for Dr. Park Mina. This is for the 73 souls you murdered. She paused, making sure every Vraxian was listening. We are coming for your homeworld, she said. Surrender now or face annihilation. Your choice. The transmission ended. Across Vraxian space, military commanders watched in disbelief. The fortress of Kresh had fallen. The legendary Fleetmaster Vexthor was dead. 147 warships destroyed. Human casualties, 3 damaged frigates, 247 personnel. The Vraxian High Command convened an emergency session. Some argued for negotiation. Others called them cowards. The Dominion did not surrender. They did not negotiate. They conquered or they died. The decision was made. They would assemble their full military might. They would crush these humans and remind the galaxy who ruled through strength. But the human fleet did not stop at Kresh. They moved systematically through Vraxian space, dismantling the defensive network piece by piece. At the Battle of Tharzone, Colonel Hongjuan led a ground assault that liberated a slave colony. The freed prisoners were from a dozen different species. When they saw human soldiers fighting to save them, many wept. The galaxy had abandoned them, but humanity had come. Commander Park Taeyang distinguished himself at the Vraxis Gate, a massive defensive station guarding the approach to the inner worlds. He commanded a fleet 3 times smaller than the defenders. Traditional tactics said he should retreat. Instead, he used the station's own mass against it, positioning his ship so that Vraxian fire would hit their own installation. When the battle ended, the gate was human territory. Major Yu Seungri rescued prisoners from a labor camp deep in Vraxian territory. His Marines fought through 3 defensive perimeters to reach the camp. What they found there hardened every human heart. Torture chambers, mass graves, evidence of experiments on living prisoners. The Vraxians had not just been conquering. They had been studying how much pain different species could endure before death. Images from the camp spread across the galaxy. Council species who had urged restraint fell silent. Some apologized to humanity for doubting their cause. Others quietly began rerouting military forces, preparing to assist if asked. The Valorian ambassador sent a message directly to Admiral Kim. "We were wrong," he said. "Do what must be done. You have our support." 3 weeks after the fall of Kresh, the human fleet reached the edge of the Vraxis Prime system, the Vraxian homeworld. Admiral Kim Daesung had left Luna Base to personally command this final assault. He stood on the bridge of the Retribution, looking at the planet that had ordered the deaths of his people. No negotiation, he reminded himself. No mercy for those who showed none. The Vraxian High Command had fortified their homeworld with everything they possessed. 3,000 warships formed defensive spheres around the planet. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons. Minefields waited to tear apart any approaching vessel. Automated defense satellites tracked every approach vector. This was the most heavily defended world in the galaxy. The Vraxians were confident. Let the humans come. They would drown in Vraxian fire. Supreme War Master Krathel broadcast to his people. The humans had won some early battles through trickery and surprise, he said. But now they faced the full might of the Dominion. Now they would learn true fear. Now they would understand what it meant to face a species born for war. His commanders cheered. His warriors readied their weapons. They would show these primitives the meaning of strength. Admiral Kim gave the order to advance. The human fleet moved forward in perfect formation. Every ship knew its role. Every captain understood the plan. Every soldier was ready to fight. Not for conquest. Not for glory. For justice. For the 73 souls who came in peace and died for it. For every species the Vraxians had enslaved. For the principle that mercy should not be mistaken for weakness. The galaxy watched. Observers from neutral species positioned themselves at safe distances. Would humanity succeed where others had failed? Or would the Vraxians crush them and prove that might still ruled the stars? The answer would come soon. Very soon. Admiral Kim gave the Vraxians one final chance. His face appeared on every screen across their homeworld. "Citizens of Vraxis Prime," he said, his voice carrying the weight of humanity's grief. "Your leaders murdered our diplomats in cold blood. They displayed their bodies as trophies. We did not come for conquest. We came for justice. You have 6 hours to surrender your war leaders. If they are not handed over, we will take them by force." Supreme War Master Krathel's response was immediate. He ordered his fleet to open fire on the human ships. The declaration was clear. The Vraxians would rather die than surrender. Admiral Kim nodded slowly. He had expected nothing less. "Very well," he said quietly. His communication officer closed the channel. Across the human fleet, weapons powered up. The time for words had ended. 3,000 Vraxian warships surged forward in a massive wave. From orbit, it looked like a swarm of insects rising to defend their nest. Missiles filled the space between the fleets. Energy weapons carved burning lines through the darkness. The largest battle in a century had begun, and the galaxy held its breath watching. The human fleet formed a defensive sphere, every ship positioned to support the others. Their point defense systems created a wall of fire that destroyed missiles before they could reach their targets. The Vraxians had numbers. Humanity had coordination. Every human ship was connected through quantum communication. Every captain knew what every other captain was doing. They moved like a single organism. Captain Kang coordinated strike groups with mathematical precision. Her combat AI predicted Vraxian attack patterns and calculated responses faster than any organic mind could process. Where the Vraxians expected to find weak points, they found concentrated fire. Where they massed for assault, human ships were already repositioning. Their numerical advantage became a liability, as their own ships blocked each other's firing lanes. The UNS Vengeance unleashed its full arsenal. Weapons that Earth had been developing in secret for decades. Weapons the Council did not know existed. Energy beams that ignored shields. Missiles that could track targets through slipspace jumps. Railguns that fired projectiles at speeds that turned them into pure kinetic energy. Each shot was a declaration. Humanity had been ready for war all along. While the fleets fought, Commander Baek Min-seok led a daring operation. His stealth teams infiltrated the Orbital Defense Command Station that controlled the planetary weapons. They moved through the station like ghosts, their advanced armor making them nearly invisible. Vraxian defenders never saw them coming. Room by room, deck by deck, they fought their way to the control center. Exactly 47 minutes after entering the station, Commander Baek stood at the main control console. Around him, his team secured the command center. Vraxian technicians were restrained but unharmed. Baek accessed the defense grid controls. With a few commands, he turned the Vraxians' own weapons against their fleet. Orbital platforms that had been firing at human ships suddenly targeted their own vessels. Chaos erupted in the Vraxian ranks. Their commanders screamed orders, trying to understand what was happening. Why were their own defenses shooting at them? Ships broke formation, trying to avoid the orbital fire. The careful battle lines collapsed into disorder. Captain Kang saw the opportunity and took it. All ships, she ordered, press the attack. The human fleet surged forward, targeting command vessels with precision strikes. Without coordination, the Vraxian numerical advantage meant nothing. They had forgotten the first rule of warfare that humanity had learned thousands of years ago. Numbers alone do not win battles. Discipline, training, and tactics win battles. And humanity had all three. After 14 hours of brutal combat, the Vraxian defensive line shattered. Ships that survived began retreating toward the planet. Some tried to surrender. Others fled into deep space. The human fleet did not pursue those who ran. This was not about conquest. It was about justice. General Oh Soo-jin received the signal she had been waiting for. The orbital space was secure. Begin the ground invasion. Thousands of drop pods descended through the atmosphere. Human Marines secured landing zones with overwhelming firepower. The Vraxians had never fought a ground war on their own planet. They had always been the invaders. Now they learned what it felt like to defend their homes. Tank battalions commanded by Colonel Jang Min-ho rolled across the desert plains, crushing defensive positions with coordinated strikes. Admiral Kim broadcast continuous updates as human forces advanced. "This is for Han Taemin," he said as Marines captured the first city. "This is for Park Mina as tanks broke through defensive walls. This is for the Harmony, as soldiers raised the UN flag over government buildings. Every victory was dedicated to the fallen. Every battle was won in their memory." Within 72 hours, human forces surrounded the planetary capital, the center of Vraxian power, the place where the High Command had ordered the massacre of diplomats. Supreme War Master Krathel watched from his bunker as human soldiers systematically dismantled his defenses. He had underestimated them. They all had. The humans were not weak. They had simply been hoping not to fight. He tried to escape through underground tunnels. Lieutenant Lee Sera found him there, trying to flee while his people died defending the city. She arrested him according to military law. He was not executed. He was not beaten. He was simply taken into custody to stand trial for his crimes. This was humanity's way. Even in victory, they followed rules. One by one, the Vraxian High Command was captured. The military leaders who had celebrated the massacre, the politicians who had ordered it, the commanders who had carried it out, all were taken alive. All would face justice, not the quick justice of execution, but the slow justice of truth. Their crimes would be documented. Their victims would be remembered, and the galaxy would witness it all. The battle was over. The Vraxian Dominion had fallen. In space, 2,800 Vraxian warships had been destroyed. On the ground, 470,000 military personnel had surrendered or been killed. The cost to humanity was 31 ships and 8,400 personnel. Each loss was mourned. Each name was recorded. But the objective had been achieved. Dr. Jung Eunji's medical teams immediately began treating the wounded. Vraxian civilians and soldiers received the same care as human personnel. Many Vraxians watched in confusion. Why were the humans helping them? They had lost. They expected to be enslaved or executed. Instead, human doctors worked tirelessly to save lives. Even the lives of their enemies. This was humanity. Fierce in war, merciful in victory. The trial of the Vraxian war leaders was broadcast across the entire galaxy. Every species watched as the evidence was presented. Video footage of the massacre. Testimony from survivors of the labor camps. Documents proving that the attack on the Harmony had been planned, not a mistake. The Vraxian High Command had deliberately murdered diplomats to send a message. Now the galaxy would send a message back. Supreme War Master Krathel stood in chains before human judges. He tried to maintain his pride, to claim he had done nothing wrong. Strength was the law of the universe, he said. The weak deserved to serve the strong. This was the natural order. The judges listened without expression. Then they delivered their verdict. Guilty of murder. Guilty of war crimes. Guilty of crimes against sapient life. 73 days after the massacre of the Harmony, the Vraxian war leaders were executed. 1 day for each victim. The galaxy watched this too. Some species protested that execution was barbaric. Others argued that the Vraxians deserved worse. Humanity did not care about either opinion. Justice had been served. The fallen had been avenged. That was all that mattered. Admiral Kim delivered one final broadcast. Let it be known across the galaxy, he said, his voice firm and clear. Humanity remembers. We honor our dead, and we protect our own. We came to the stars seeking peace. We still seek peace, but never mistake our mercy for weakness. Never believe our preference for diplomacy means we cannot fight. And never ever harm those who come to you under a flag of truce. On Vraxis Prime, humanity did something the galaxy did not expect. They helped rebuild. Human engineers worked alongside Vraxian civilians to repair damaged infrastructure. Human food supplies fed hungry populations. Human medical teams treated the sick and injured. This was not conquest. This was reconstruction. Humanity was showing the Vraxians what they could have had if they had chosen peace. Ambassador Song Hyun arrived to help establish a new government. She was young for an ambassador, but she had studied the Vraxian culture carefully. She spoke their language fluently. She understood their history, and she believed that the Vraxian people deserved a chance to choose a different path. Not all of them had supported the High Command. Many had been trapped by a system they did not create. Working with Vraxian civilian leaders, she helped create a democratic government. The military was reformed, limited to defense only. The warrior culture that had dominated for centuries was gradually replaced with something new: education, science, art, things that had been suppressed under the old regime. It would take time, perhaps decades. But change had begun, reparations were negotiated, but not to Earth. Humanity insisted the payments go to the species the Vraxians had conquered and enslaved. Those who had suffered most should receive compensation. The freed colonies received resources to rebuild. The families of victims received support. Justice was not just about punishment. It was also about restoration. The Galactic Council watched all of this with growing amazement. Humanity had won a crushing military victory. They could have taken anything they wanted. They could have enslaved the Vraxians as the Vraxians had enslaved others. Instead, they stayed only long enough to ensure stability, then began withdrawing their forces. This was unprecedented in galactic history. Species that had threatened sanctions now sent diplomats requesting trade agreements. Minor species that had suffered under Vraxian aggression hailed humanity as liberators. The Valorian ambassador personally apologized to Admiral Kim for doubting humanity's resolve. "We should have listened to you," he said. "We should have acted sooner." Kim accepted the apology with grace. The past could not be changed. Only the future mattered now. Humanity returned to the Galactic Council. But things were different now. Earth was granted a permanent seat on the Security Council. Human opinions carried weight that they had not before. Other species approached humanity with respect. Some with friendship, some with fear. All understood that the young species had proven themselves in the oldest way possible. Through strength, on Luna a memorial was constructed, 73 pillars of light visible from Earth every night. Each pillar bore a name: Han Taimin, Park Mina, Li Hyun, all of them. Families came to stand beneath the lights and remember. Children learned the story of those who went seeking peace and died for it. The memorial became a reminder. Peace was worth pursuing. But it must be defended. Captain Kang Hyejin was promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's defense fleet. Commander Baek Min-seok became the head of Special Operations Command. General Oh Soo-jin established the Humanitarian Corps, armed forces dedicated to protecting vulnerable species from aggression. They would not wait for council approval next time someone needed help. Dr. Shin Mirai continued her research, ensuring humanity maintained its technological advantage. Admiral Kim Dae-sung retired after the war. His final speech became legendary across the galaxy. "We came to the stars in peace," he said. "We remain peaceful, but never mistake our mercy for weakness. We remember our dead. We honor our fallen, and we will always protect our own." Those words were translated into 100 languages. They were taught in schools. They became humanity's declaration to the universe. 5 years after the war, a new ship launched from Earth orbit. The UNS Han Taemin, a diplomatic vessel named for the fallen ambassador. Captain Lee Sarah commanded it, promoted for her actions during the war. Ambassador Song Hyeon was aboard, leading a peaceful mission to establish relations with a newly discovered species. The galaxy watched with interest, but this time 2 heavy cruisers escorted the diplomatic ship. The UNS Park Mina and the UNS Lee Hyun, powerful warships that made humanity's position clear. They still sought peace. They still believed in diplomacy, but they would never again send diplomats unprotected. The message was understood across the galaxy. Humanity was peaceful, but humanity was not weak. On Vraxis Prime, a statue was erected by the new government. It showed a human and a Vraxian standing together, looking toward the stars. The inscription was in both languages. "They came in peace. We chose war. They showed us mercy when we deserved none. May we never forget this lesson." Young Vraxians visited the statue on school trips, learning about the war their leaders had started and lost. Across the galaxy, a phrase became common when discussing humanity. "They came in peace," species would say to each other, but war came for them and they mastered it completely. Military academies studied human tactics. Diplomats analyzed human negotiations. Everyone understood that a fundamental balance had shifted. Peace was still possible, but only when all sides chose it. On Earth, life continued. People went to work, raised families, dreamed of the future. But they never forgot the 73. Every year on the anniversary, the lights on Luna burned brighter. Every year, humanity remembered that peace has a price. Sometimes that price is vigilance. Sometimes it is strength. And sometimes, when all else fails, it is the willingness to fight for what is right. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was peaceful, but humanity was also ready, and no one would ever again mistake one for the other.